Hello there, folks. A little bit of an interesting one that I've just sort of popped up for today, actually, for no specific reason. Oh, wait, yes, there is. So, yeah, today, on this day in 1937, was the publication of the first ever version of The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien. And because of that, I thought it would be a really fun idea to talk about why I like the book, and about how the game got me back into playing the Middle-earth strategy battle game as a whole, actually, which is kind of strange. The Hobbit was probably one of the first of the... Here you go. One of the first fantasy books that I ever read. I had heard the BBC version of the Lord of the Rings in the car many times, and the actual version of The Hobbit that I read had this cover on it, which is this wonderful drawing of Smaug, and then I never noticed until I was much older the little tiny version of Bilbo hiding there in the corner. But I read that. It was my mum's copy that she got when she was younger, and it was basically falling apart by the time that I replaced it. It was replaced in, let me just check, replaced in 2012, as you can see there, by my parents for Christmas, and I got myself this wonderful version of the book with that lovely, amazing, classic artwork on the front, and it has once again been read as many times as I can possibly think to do so. As I can see by flicking through the book that the last time I read this, I got to flies and spiders before I I decided to pack it in for another book. Probably it was the Dresden Files, I imagine. But yes, so The Hobbit has always had like a pretty impressive place in my heart, and it's obviously it's an impressive book. So yeah, it feels good to kind of celebrate the book and what it brings to the table. I think for the most part, one of the things that's so nice about the game, about the book and then the game, which we're going to in a little bit, is that it's just such a good adventure. Like, it's a kid's book, obviously, and it feels like a kid's book in places, but I think in the most part, it's just all about these really fantastical adventures that a little wide-eyed hobbit goes on, somewhat not of his own volition. So he fights against trolls, and he delves into mines full of goblins and escapes them. He has riddles in the dark with a strange, creepy fellow called Gollum, and then he witnesses battles, meets a massive werebear-style fellow named Bjorn, meets with the kings of the elves, and rides down barrels, and steals a mighty jewel from the heart of the mountain, and brokers some semblance of peace between the dwarves and the men and the elves outside before the battle comes to an end. And then he goes home. And I think one of the nice things about that is that, as a wide-eyed Englishman who loves going off into the countryside, having a book like this fill you with fascinating ideas about what lives in the woods and in the mountains and on the hills and under hills, I suppose, as well. It was just brilliant to have something like this that really reinforced that feeling of adventure, and would always have me out on walks, smacking my brother with a stick, as we were wont to do, pretending to be, dwarves and hobbits and orcs and goblins as we fought at mountains and through woods and that kind of thing as well. So wasn't quite LARP, it was nearly there, but yeah. And so yeah, The Hobbit has had a massive place in my heart, and so that obviously led into liking Lord of the Rings and all that kind of stuff as well, and fantasy in general. I mean, another book that really spoke to me was like Brian Jakes' Redwall series and all that kind of stuff as well. That's had a massive inspiration on me too, but I think for the most part, I think Tolkien's work has been the one that has really strived to, push me on to keep delving deeper into fantasy and enjoying it, and also the historical side of things as well, because I love Norse mythology, I love Anglo-Saxon tales and folklore, mainly because of the way that Tolkien kind of brings those to life through his work, and the way that it's tied into that kind of dark age and sort of sometimes ancient past that we have in our own world as well. But yeah, so obviously today is the day that the Hobbit was published, and tomorrow, on September the 22nd, is Hobbit Day, which I think is pretty awesome as well, which is the birthdays of both Bilbo and Frodo Baggins, which I think is always really nice. Another interesting thing I realised as well when I was a lot younger, actually, is that I think Gandalf leaves the message on Weathertop, at least in the radio play, on the 3rd of October, which is my birthday, which I think is really cool. So it's Tolkien Week. It's got Hobbit Day, fantastic stuff there. It's obviously the publication of the Hobbit for everyone at the same time as well. But how is this linked into the Hobbit strategy battle game? Well, I had been playing Warhammer 40,000, and I'd been playing Age of Sigmar, and I'd been playing War Machine and Malifaux and lots of other different games. But when this set came out, which was the Escape from Goblin Town set, I kind of looked at it and I thought, oh, that's kind of cool, but I don't think anyone that I know is going to really dive in and play the game with me and all that kind of stuff. And so I waited a little bit, and I waited a few more years, and a few more years, and then I think it must have been in that strange hiatus period where nothing came out. I walked into my local store, and this was on the shelf still, with the Radagast, the special Radagast. Not so special Radagast because he was in every set that anyone ever bought. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to buy it. And so I took it down from the shelf, and I took it home, and I was living with some friends at the time. And I cracked out all the models, and I started building them. And I got to say, I think the actual models that they put inside that set were actually pretty cool. I know that Thorin's Company set in particular, I genuinely really like the sculpts in this one. Now, I painted them a couple of years ago now, but and so I think I could probably come back at them and paint them up a bit nicer than I did, mainly because I didn't do a lot of highlighting back then. But I genuinely think, like, the model for Gandalf, I think looks great. I think Bilbo looks awesome, although I gave him Sting, of course. The version of Thorin is also really nice, but I gave him his oaken shield that he could wield. But I genuinely think that it's actually one of the nicest sets that they did, and obviously it was only one of a few of the plastic kits actually that was brought out during this time. But it was generally really nice. Had a good set of model sculpts in it, really fun to paint, and all that good stuff. The other really nice thing about the set was it came with those Goblin Town miniatures as well, so you had these two to play around with, which was really cool. So, oh, wow, that's interesting. But anyway, so skipping over that strange, weird look into the Matrix. The Goblin Warrior set was really nice. I mean, it was a bit weird because it all felt a little bit plasticine-y and all that kind of stuff. But I really liked that miniature set. I thought it was really fun to paint, a little bit samey, but easy anyway. And you also got the Goblin King and his little retinue in that throne, and the Goblin Scribe's little bucket for him to fly around in as well. So it was a generally really nice set, and one of the other really good things about it was that it kind of slowly integrated you into the game and what it was all about. So, like, this is where they added in a lot of extra stuff and tweak the rules and refine them and all that kind of things as well to kind of make the game that we have today. Obviously, things have come on a little bit since then, and we've had FAQ and errata and all that kind of stuff as well. But it was really cool to see the Hobbit strategy battle game almost embracing the very kind of essence of what made the Lord of the Rings, the strategy battle game back in the day, so good. It wasn't necessarily the big battles. It wasn't necessarily the fact that you could build war bands of warriors that would fight in mighty sieges and all that kind of stuff. That's cool, obviously, and I love that sort of things. But the really big stuff that sort of got me was the narrative play. And I thought that this box set really pushed that narrative feel, especially with the way that they tweaked things, updated mechanics and all that kind of stuff as well. I thought it was really fun, how each of the dwarves felt very different. They all had this same, a special set of skills that they could use. You can actually see it in my digital version of the Hobbit book as well. Like, Each of the heroes in Thorin's company had something fun and different about them, and I love that you had like things like combat synergy between Killy and Philly, which was really cool. Balin was always one of my favourite characters. I think Dwalin's still probably my favourite from the movies, but Thorin's close as well. But even a little tiny Ori had some fun little things with Chronicler and Deadeye for you to play around with, which I thought was really nice. In fact, there's probably more characterization of the models here than there is in the movies, or at least the second and the third one anyway. But yeah, I think the Dwarves got a little bit hard done by, especially those that weren't the main set of them anyway. But yeah, it was really fun diving in and exploring the different characters that you could play around with and what they could do. And I thought that the way that they broke down the scenarios and stuff was really nice as well. I think that the starter booklet that came in the set came with that was in the Escape from Goblin Town set, came with a like a walkthrough of getting you started. So you'd start off with maybe 1 or 2 dwarves fighting against a bunch of goblins, and you'd learn how to strike. Then you'd learn how to shoot. Then you'd learn how to do special strikes. Then you'd learn about more complex things like monster attacks, and all of that was done over the kind of set of terrain that they'd built for the game. And I thought it was really fun, and me and my friend actually sat down in our local gaming store, and we actually played through maybe 3 or 4 of those in an afternoon, and it was really good fun, because obviously I took on the role of the Gobbos, obviously, to teach the game to my friend, and they just had fun playing around with each of the different dwarf heroes, using all their different special strikes and all that kind of stuff as well, and genuinely just having a really nice time with it. Let's see if the site's actually working now. It is working. There we go. So yeah, pretty decent plastic models, a decent set of rules that had been updated but didn't stray too far from what had made the initial set of rules from Lord of the Rings work. The main issue, I think, for a lot of people was the fact that it just didn't have the same constant stream of updates that the Lord of the Rings had had. Over time we got a whole bunch of plastic and fine cast and also resin kits for the range. A lot more over the last couple of years than maybe during the actual heyday of the movies, to be honest. But yeah, we got some, and I think at this time the sculpting was a little bit hit and miss. Like, for example, you had stuff like the Lords of Erebor, so the Thror and Thrain kit, I thought was fantastic. I thought it was really nice. The Riddles in the Dark set was also really fun. I really liked that one. And in general, you had a fair amount of good characters and stuff that they brought to life. But then you had stuff like the Mirkwood Elves with their strange shields and all that kind of stuff, and all done in this new material, fine cast, that everyone was just not getting on with. And it became one of those sets, one of those games where I think you probably felt a little bit kind of priced out and shut out of the hobby, because you wanted to try and play big set pieces as well as all these smaller engagements and stuff, and the game didn't necessarily, or the range didn't necessarily offer that up for you. I think now, I should say, one of the things that was really interesting to me was when I was researching all about this stuff, there's a really interesting snippet that comes from one of the old books, which is the There and Back Again one, where they talk about exactly the issues that they'd had. Obviously one of the big things was that the actual production of the Lord of the Rings, the production of the Lord of the Rings had years and years and years worth of work on it before anything was put to film. And so concept and art and characters and designs and worlds had all been fleshed out. So when the crew from Games Workshop went over to go and learn about it to make the game, they had this really awesome basis from which to build on things. Obviously they couldn't show anything that was going to be in the Two Towers or Return of the King, but it meant that when the Fellowship of the Ring set came out, they could do all of those amazing characters and build all the different scenarios all the way through up to Amon Hen at the end in incredible detail. With this, though, because everything was so up to the wire with production for the films and stuff, that meant that getting a hold of concepts and the final look of characters and monsters and storylines, enabling to build scenarios, was just basically impossible. And so even though we had the Unexpected Journeys original core book, and then there was kind of 2 supplements for the Battle of Five Armies and Desolation of Smaug as well, although the other way around, obviously. Everything was always kind of Games Workshop chasing to kind of catch up, and because of the, I'd say, because of the way that the Hobbit movies didn't necessarily reach as large an audience as the Lord of the Rings did. I mean, they pulled in a lot of money, but everyone, I think, suggests, well, from what I hear online anyway, and amongst my friends, I would imagine a lot of people would think that the Hobbit movies were inferior to the Lord of the Rings ones, which is, nothing massively wild to say. It meant that obviously they were chasing their tails and making products for a set of films that didn't have the same traction, that didn't have the same kind of PR as the Lord of the Rings did. There was a Battle Games of Middle-earth magazine for Lord of the Rings. For The Hobbit, what do we get? A bunch of releases to begin with, a smattering of things here and there, large, massive models for the likes of Smaug, which is an impressive model. I think it was the last one that the Perrys ever sculpted, and also one of the first ones they did in CAD as well. An impressive model, but no one really wants to spend £418 on something when they could probably buy something for a lot cheaper, and they could build up a larger collection of interesting models for their game, and hopefully not in Finecast and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, I digress. This obviously was really fascinating when it came up in the book that, this is the reason why they couldn't make those supplements as deep as some of the previous ones they'd worked on. And now, I think, as we've stepped past that period of time where the extended editions have actually been out there in the world, and we now have the Middle-earth strategy battle game, I think it's probably worth people thinking about revisiting what The Hobbit offers. Now, yes, obviously, the miniatures range is interesting. For the most part, you're probably going to want to pick up something like Thorin Oakenshield and his company, and then maybe step towards picking up, certain selections of miniatures. So obviously, the Goblin Warriors, the Hunter Orcs would probably be good to pick up. The Felwargs, obviously, you're going to need them. The Azog model is always a nice one to get. Riddles in the Dark, if you want to play some kind of scenarios based around that. The Hunter Orcs as well. And, in general, a lot of these models aren't necessarily bad. I mean, the Hunter Orcs are not, the best, but they're a decent plastic kit by Games Workshop standards. They always do pretty nice stuff. But I think the reason why I think we should give it another go, and I think maybe more people should put a little bit more sort of oomph into playing games based around it and telling stories and building armies and all that kind of thing, is because, as I said at the beginning, the Hobbit really sort of epitomizes that kind of adventure narrative gameplay that a lot of people really like about the Middle-earth system as a whole. You can play through, as we can see in the book for the Hobbit, the Armies of the Hobbit. I mean, you've got all the different profiles in there, which is fantastic. Obviously, these are all up to date, more or less. There's obviously some more stuff in for the Necromancer and that kind of thing. But as you're... I'm not making everyone sick. There we go. But yeah, so you can play through the Destruction of Dale if you've got a dragon. You can play through the Battle of Azanulbizar. I think I said that right. I never say it properly. But then you have these really fun scenarios like this one. So you can go through Roast Mutton, and you can play the engagements with the trolls. You can, fight the battle against the hunting party with Elrond and his knights. Or you could maybe tweak this and have it so you're actually playing out a chase-style scenario where Thorin's company are trying to escape from these, and then the knights come on later. Maybe you want to build that into a larger scenario as well. You have the Escape from Goblin Town, which is a fantastic one to try and do because it's got a really nice run-and-gun Hollywood feel to it. You can dive in and play that. Out of the frying pan into the fire. Get those pine cones ready, I would say. Flies and spiders, exploring what's going on there in the woods against all the stuff that the forest can throw at them. And then you start to move into what's happening in Desolation Smaug and Battle of Five Armies. So you have Fire and Water, the Fall of the Necromancer. We've got to try and get your hands on poor old Gandalf. And then the Battle of Five Armies itself as well. And, you know, I genuinely think that you could have a lot of fun going through the scenarios of The Hobbit and really embracing the idea of it being a narrative campaign where you link stuff together a little bit like they did in the supplements for The Hobbit, and genuinely just, you know, having another pop at this and telling a story and embracing the kind of quirky adventure narrative feel of what they offer with the Hobbit range. And I mean, as things have gone on, I think we've seen a lot better models popping up for the range. I mean, the Iron Hill Dwarves are really cool, even incredibly expensive. It's like building a Horus Heresy army. You've got Dane Ironfoot, who's been updated. I mean, obviously he has his hammer there, but there's a version of him older with his axe, his red axe, which is always nice to see. And for some reason, the Games Workshop website always does this, where it becomes incredibly hard to go between pages. But yeah, I mean, Forge World managed to bulk out a lot of the range with a lot of interesting models for you to play with, especially when it comes to things like Dale. And I think Dale is probably one of the best set of models they've ever done, actually. But yeah, I think there's a really nice set of different models out there for you to play the different scenarios. Maybe you kind of do things in an interesting way and you actually try and put together a fun set of scenarios that are more book-based. So, you know, you do that opening roast mutton scenario with the trolls. That's cool. That's all grand. Then you split up what happens in Goblin Town, and you have Thorin and the rest of his company of dwarf heroes with Gandalf battling against the Goblin King and trying to escape that way. But then you also put together an interesting scenario based around Bilbo, maybe. Maybe you have him trying to do a little bit of a sneaky thing away from some goblins. And then you have like his riddles in the dark thing played out using cards like they sometimes use in some of the Lord of the Rings scenarios. I think that would be really fun. You can obviously still do things like the Warg attack and keeping them away with the fire and waiting for the eagles to show up. You could, of course, do very awesome things with Mirkwood and the explorations there. You can have the walking through, fighting against the spiders, maybe cut out the elves, saving them, as it were. But then you could also do the barrels out of bonds thing, but maybe kind of play on it a little bit and have the dwarves having to get down to the cellar to get into the barrels and then escape, and then that kind of play out that. I think that could be really fun. You could obviously bring in some movie elements there to have like orcs trying to chase them, or the elves trying to chase them. Actually, would probably make more sense. Make the elves the bad guys there. Silly little Thranduil. And then, of course, you've got all the stuff in Dale. You can have them sneaking into the mountain to get the treasures and all that kind of stuff. Have some interesting card-based style scenario for playing that out. And then, obviously, the Battle of Five Armies could almost be played out a little bit how they kind of break down sections of other larger battles into smaller ones for the Middle-earth strategy battle game. So you could play out, you know, the final stand of Thorin with Bjorn, you know, defending his body and fighting the goblins around him. You could do all the other different sections where Philly and Killy, you know, go down. And obviously all these things aren't massively fleshed out because Bilbo gets knocked on the back of the head and get, you know, falls unconscious. But you could have some really nice fun with that. And obviously you've also got the Fall of the Necromancer stuff, which happens around the same time if you really want to dive in and have fun with stuff there as well. But I think it would be really fun to try out The Hobbit and you know, see whether or not it evokes more of that kind of narrative feel that everybody loves about Lord of the Rings. Step away from building warbands and all that kind of things, even though that's what I'm doing at the moment, and maybe come and revisit some of those older models and see if you can bring them to life in interesting ways. I think I'm probably going to do something similar. I think I'm going to be cracking out the old Thorin's Company and the old Goblin Town stuff and giving it a new lick of paint, a new lease of life, and trying to bring a lot of those models back to some semblance of skilled painteriness, I guess, on the tabletop. I think it could be really cool. But anyway, something to think about, I think. Even wearing a lovely Gandalf t-shirt because, you know, got to represent Middle-earth, right? But anyway, after a little sojourn into the world of Oathmark and all that kind of stuff, I thought an interesting chat video would be fun to put up today. for people to watch over the next couple of days. You got the weekend coming up. Maybe dig out some Hobbit models, start painting them, giving them a new lick of paint, or maybe revisit a scenario, maybe that roast mutton one, and play that out with the wonderful trolls that they built, which I actually think are really cool. Actually, I think the trolls, I think they did a really good job on them, especially trying to mimic the look of them in the Lord of the Rings, whereas they're kind of hunched over and stuff. I think they did a really nice job with that. And that was just, I mean, you know, it's 50 quid because it's 3 massive resin fine cast models. But yeah, I think you could have fun with that one. Do they actually say that it's? They don't even say what it's made of anymore. Are they plastic? Actually, they're plastic. Of course they're plastic. Jeez, of course they're plastic. But anyway, still £50. Anyway, I'm glad I caught that correction before I doomed myself, right? But anyway, tell me what you think. You know, it's the day of the publication of The Hobbit. It'll be Hobbit Day tomorrow. We've got a whole bunch of Hobbity stuff happening over the next couple of days, I'm sure, online. Maybe even sit down and read some of The Hobbit. Or have it on in the background as you're painting some models. Maybe watch the Ralph Bakshi version of The Hobbit. Maybe even dive into a graphic novel or something like that and read it that way. But yeah, maybe think about The Hobbit and maybe give it another look. It might not necessarily be well loved by Games Workshop, but a lot of folks put a lot of effort into the Armies of the Hobbit book and bringing that back to life, I think. And yeah, I think there's some really nice stuff in there for people that love the narrative elements of the Middle-earth strategy battle game rules, and are definitely worth giving it another look. But yeah, so anyway, I'm going to say do the whole thing, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. As always, if you like what I do, you can dive down into the comments below and you can check out my Ko-fi link, and you can drop a little donation. All my donations go into buying more hobby stuff for me to create more videos and all that kind of thing as well. I don't squander it on such paltry things as tea, although I do like tea. So yeah, if you want to do that, that's great, but you don't have to. The most important thing to me is that people dive in, they enjoy these videos, they enjoy the conversation, maybe they put it on the background and listen to them as they're painting, and maybe it'll stir some interesting conversations amongst you folks out there, and will get you thinking about things in a different way. And it's just a way for me to talk and witter on about the things that I love the most. So yeah, but yeah, like, share, subscribe, do all that good stuff. Comment down below with your thoughts on the Hobbit strategy battle game. Did you enjoy it? Did you come in late like me? Did it rekindle your love for the Middle-earth strategy battle game? Did it damn it? Have you had fun with the game, as it were, and all that kind of good stuff? Let me know, and we'll be back with another video over the weekend, so watch out for that one. Bye for now. Awkward look off to the side. It's okay. I'm a stealthy hobbit. Bye.